Somewhere in your apartment, 20 minutes before you pull into the driveway, something shifts. Your cat was deeply asleep, unreachably asleep, the way cats sleep when nothing is required of them. Then, without any sound and without any visible trigger, they stop. Eyes open. They move slowly and with purpose toward the front door, and they sit down. Nobody rang the bell. Nothing changed in the room. You weren't there to see it, but it happened with a precision that would embarrass most calendar reminders. Most people explain this with routine. Cats are creatures of habit, the thinking goes. They know your schedule because you keep one, and animals are good at patterns. That explanation is comforting. It makes the behavior feel familiar, almost mechanical. And in a surface sense, it's not entirely wrong. But here's the problem. Pattern recognition alone doesn't explain what is actually happening in the tissue and chemistry of a cat's brain during those 20 minutes. It doesn't explain why cats whose owners work irregular hours still manage to be waiting at the door. It doesn't explain why, after longer absences, the greeting behavior doesn't just continue, it intensifies in duration, in physicality, in the sounds the cat makes. The answer lives several layers deeper than habit, in a system of interlocking biological clocks, neurochemical countdowns, and sensory processing that begins the moment you leave and doesn't stop until you walk back through the door. So what is actually running inside them while you're gone? The foundation of this anticipation is built in a structure called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, a cluster of neurons in the hypothalamus that functions as the brain's master clock. In cats, this system is remarkably plastic. Unlike the rigid circadian rhythms found in many species, the feline internal clock calibrates itself around the specific daily patterns of the humans it lives with. If you leave at 8:14 every morning and return at 6:07 every evening, that schedule gets encoded. Not loosely, precisely. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for tracking time intervals, continuously compares the current environmental state against that remembered temporal template, running a real-time calculation of how much time remains. But the more interesting finding is what operates alongside the circadian system. Researchers studying hippocampal function have identified a class of neurons called time cells, specialized cells that fire sequentially during an empty time interval, constructing a neural representation of time as it passes. Think of them less like a clock and more like a film reel, each cell firing in sequence, documenting a specific moment in the gap between your departure and your return. In cats with strong owner attachment, studies show these cells fire in increasingly organized, rapid sequences as the anticipated social reward draws closer. The countdown to your arrival is not passive waiting. It is an active neural event, and it has been building, frame by frame, since the moment you left. Here's what nobody expected. The most precise timekeeping system in your cat's brain isn't neurological, it's olfactory. Your cat is literally smelling the passage of time. When you leave your home, you leave behind an invisible record, a layered profile of volatile organic compounds, shed skin cells, and personal pheromones, distributed across every surface you've touched and every room you've moved through. This scent signature is not static. It decays at a measurable, predictable rate. The feline olfactory system, equipped with over 200 million scent receptors and a sensitivity roughly 14 times greater than a human's, can detect this decay curve with extraordinary precision. Researchers studying olfactory chronometry in domestic animals describe this mechanism as a biological scent clock, a continuous chemical readout of elapsed time processed through a dual-structured apparatus comprising the primary olfactory epithelium and the vomeronasal organ at the roof of the mouth. As your specific scent concentration drops toward a threshold that historically corresponds with your arrival window, the signal fires. Not approximate. Not a general sense that time has passed. Your scent is fading. That is the signal. Not that something new is coming, but that something deeply familiar is about to be restored. Compare that to what happens in cats with anxious attachment, a documented subset of the domestic feline population in which the stress response during human absence is significantly elevated. In these animals, the pre-arrival window doesn't look like quiet anticipation. It looks like agitation. The hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis fires at elevated levels throughout the wait, driving cortisol into ranges typically associated with environmental threat. These cats pace, they vocalize. Their behavior during the 20-minute window is neurologically indistinguishable from mild fear. And yet the moment the door opens, the response normalizes rapidly. Oxytocin surges. The greeting, the full body press, the slow blink, the positioning against your legs, initiates within seconds. The difference between anxious and secure cats is not in the depth of the bond. It is in the brain's capacity to regulate the discomfort of waiting for something it deeply wants. The anticipation itself is identical across both groups. Which raises the more precise question: what is generating the anticipation at all? The answer sits inside the dopaminergic reward system, specifically in the circuit running between the ventral tegmental area and a region called the nucleus accumbens. In plain terms, this is the wanting circuit, the part of the brain responsible not for pleasure itself, but for the intense drive to seek it. Neuroscientists call this property incentive salience, the degree to which a predicted reward compels the brain toward action. In the 20-minute window before your arrival, the nucleus accumbens begins releasing dopamine in anticipation. Not in response to your presence, in anticipation of it. Your cat's brain is rehearsing the reunion before it happens, using the same neurochemical signal it would produce if you were already in the room. This is why the cat who was completely undisturbed for hours suddenly wakes, stretches, and moves toward the door.